It has been said that sports doesn't just reveal your identity, it shapes it. Every practice, every game, every challenge builds the person you're becoming beyond the scoreboard. Let's talk about identity through sports on today's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. All right, welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it relates to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have Freed-Hardeman Head Volleyball Coach, Miss Amanda Bretherick, with me on today's episode. Amanda, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is the first time you've been on the podcast, so a lot of listeners might not know a whole lot about you. So why don't you explain a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
So I started attending Freed-Hardeman in 2012 and was a member of the volleyball team under Coach Todd Humphrey, who I think was just on last week.
Yep.
And I played for him for 4 years, and then I moved to Savannah, Tennessee, and I coached high school and middle school volleyball there while teaching sixth grade English. And my fourth year there, I got a call from Coach Humphrey, and he said, hey, we get to have an assistant coach for the first time, and I want you to apply. And so I applied and ended up getting that role. So I became the assistant volleyball coach at Freed in 2020 during COVID. So that was interesting start. Yeah, that first season was different than any season probably has ever been or ever will be, hopefully. So started then, and then I worked under Coach Humphrey as assistant coach for 3 seasons. And then 2 years ago became the head coach. And this is now my 3rd season as head coach.
Awesome. Yeah. And so throughout your time, I looked up some stats on you, like 5th all time in, let's make sure, tied for 5th all time in Lady Line history for most blocks. So yes. Pretty successful career.
And a player last year is actually the one who
broke it.
Or it was 2 years ago, Annalise Jackson, correct? Okay. So it was kind of cool to have a player break my record. I was happy that it was her and not someone else, because I can claim a little bit of that I helped coach her, right? Yeah. But probably not. She was just a talented athlete. So.
Yeah, and you were also assistant coach of the year in 2022 for the Mid-South Conference. So that was your 2nd year as assistant coach, I guess?
I think that was my third year. 3rd year, yes, because it was right before I became head coach. So that was an awesome honor and kind of, I think, helped get this position as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's great. It's great to have you on today. And we're talking about identity through sports. Thought you'd be a good one, too, for this because you were a former athlete at Freed-Hardeman. Now you're a coach. So it's kind of been ingrained in you for a lot of your life. You've been an athlete for a lot of your life. And I think a lot of times athletes can sometimes take on this identity that's just sports, and they don't have anything else because they've played sports all their life, and they kind of take on an identity that's just sports related. And we talk a lot about on this podcast how we kind of need to try to be well-rounded and have our identity and other things besides the wins and losses, and character is definitely important in that too. So I thought you'd be good to come on and talk about that. So how can an athlete's identity be shaped by the things they have experienced in the sports setting? Now this can be positive and negative, right? We can have positive things as a result of sports, but then there could be some negative things as well. So what are some positives and negatives, how we can be shaped by sports?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. First off, when I saw you publish the title of this podcast, Identity Through Sports, and my immediate thought was, but wait, that's not true. That's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny immediately. And like you said, it's easy as an athlete to identify with just, hey, I'm a volleyball player, I'm a baseball player, whatever it is, and that become kind of who you are. But that is super dangerous because sports are like a life in a magnifying glass kind of. So I feel like the highs get magnified, but so do the lows. And so like right now we're dealing with some seniors who are injured, and if their whole identity is I'm a volleyball player and their very last opportunity playing, it doesn't go the way they were hoping, then that can be crushing. And so I remember some injuries when I was a player, and just dealing with the mental side of it was even harder than the physical most of the time. And so identifying with your sport as your only, like, hey, I am a volleyball player, when that sport lets you down, whether you don't have a good season or you get injured or you graduate, that's the worst part, right? If I could, I joke with Coach Humphrey, I signed on a leap day. And so I think I should still have 12 years of eligibility because I've only used one 4-year span, right? Leap day to leap day. So I think I should still get to play. But when you identify only with your sport and it lets you down, it's hard to stay motivated to keep going in all aspects of life sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's one thing we talk about with the girls a lot on our team is you are so much more than just your sport. And we actually, this preseason, had a bunch of guest speakers come and talk to our team because we move in a couple weeks early. And President Shannon was one of those. And he came in and talked about people are so much more than what you see on the outside a lot of times.
Yeah.
So campus may see my girls as, oh, that's a volleyball player. But when you get to know them, there's so much more.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the fun things about coaching is I get to see these girls as people. Yeah. And that's one thing that Coach Will and I strive to do. Coach Will's our assistant coach. We strive to do as coaches is get to know who they are outside of sport. Yeah. So that way when sport doesn't go as they're hoping, right? They may not get the starting position they wanted. They may get injured. We can still encourage them through who they are outside of sport. So one of my favorite authors, Bob Goff, I think it was his Everybody Always book. He talks about telling people who they are. And so I think it's important to also compliment players for who they are, not just how they play.
Not just their accomplishments on the court. Yeah.
And so that's something that we emphasize and we encourage our girls to do as well to each other. So if a player has a stellar day and the best stats we've seen, that may be something that we compliment. But then on another day when they're struggling, if they were an awesome teammate on the sidelines, that's another thing. So actually just the other day, we were watching film and the whole film session was just on how to be an encourager. And so I showed film on times when during a game, we were super good encouragers.
Yeah.
So the bench, running out on the court almost, which you can't go all the way on the court, but getting out to the court and just hyping up their teammates.
Yeah.
That was something that we praise because that shows character. And that's putting team first instead of self. So even though they may not be on the court where they want to be, they're still so vital because of who they are.
Yeah. And we think about these successes too. And I mention this a lot in the classes I teach, and I reference athletes specifically because being an athlete, although there are some challenges there with just having an identity in sports, and there could be some negatives to that, there's a lot of positives too because you learn how to work well with others, small group communication, relationships, team dynamics, like that prepares you for a job, anything that you do in life, working well with others. You mentioned specifically encouraging others. That every organization needs someone that's going to encourage you. I always call it the joy of inside out in an organization. Everybody needs a joy. So I always, if I want to work with someone, I want someone that has that joy, have that encouragement. So kind of touched on a little bit of those positive things as well, although a lot of times we think about just having an identity in sports can be a negative thing. There are a lot of positives too. But speaking of some of those negatives, what are some of the dangers of tying too much of our identity to athletic successes or performance? What is kind of the danger that you see in just tying all of your identity into sports and successes?
So I reflect back on my senior year of college, and I remember my very last game, I went back to my room, and my bed was lofted. I sat under my bed, and I just wrote this long expose, like, who am I now? I've lost the one thing that I've been for the past 10 years. Who am I now? And it was just not all of myself, because in that essay, I also wrote, like, I can be this and I can be this. And now I have time to go explore the other facets of myself. But I just think that's how most athletes are. When it's over, who are you now? And I think instead of viewing it that way, we need to view it like, this has made me handle hard things better. That's something we talk about a lot.
Adversity.
Yes. How to work through something when it doesn't go my way, right? That's always really important. Negatively, I think one of the things about just identifying as an athlete is you lose sight too of who you were created to be.
Yeah.
Because when I'm recruiting people, I always, on the phone, I say, I don't think when we get to heaven, God's going to be like, oh, you shanked that pass on game point. You can't come in.
Right.
Or, oh, you lost that fifth set to this team. You can't come in. He's going to say, how were you as a teammate? And to me, he's going to say, how did you help grow this athlete? How did you make them a better person? How did you hold them accountable when they were falling? Or how did you lift them up when they were struggling? And I think as athletes, they're going to get asked, like, how did you support your teammate? Were you a good person when things didn't go your way, or did you pout? Who are you trying to grow into? Because I think we're human, and we all have days where the hard things get to us.
Yeah.
And so how do I grow from that, and how do I try to do better next time? And so that's something we really emphasize is life is more than ball. And it has to be, because God didn't just make us to pass the ball around. If he did, then that seems a little silly to me.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, volleyball without the spiritual aspect doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, who cares how good you can pass a ball with your forearms?
Yeah.
It in the grand scheme of life, that doesn't really get you a lot.
Yeah.
But because sport is so much more, and it allows us to grow in such a hyper speed setting, right? Like, it takes life and it puts it really fast.
Yeah.
And you have to go through ups and downs really fast, point by point. And I think that really expedites the growth process. And I think God uses sport to mold us into who he created us to be, to get us through the hard things early.
Yeah, and one of the things I looked up with the dangers of just putting all your identity in sports, it causes you to have a fragile self-worth.
Yes.
So we see this a lot with like the things that we see on social media, and if something negative is said about you, I mean, maybe it's just, I think about athletes during certain times of year, like during college basketball season, and they just have a terrible game, and they're just the news is all over, oh, so-and-so had a terrible game. If that's all that your identity is in, then you're going to have a pretty negative outlook on your life just because of what people are saying about you, whatever it is. So if that's all that what's your identity in, you don't have a really good life balance, I guess. You don't have, you're always focused on one thing, and all these other areas you might be lacking because you're not developing that. And so you mentioned this a little bit, and you might have a little bit to add to it, but I think coaches and mentors play a big role in shaping this narrative. And you talked about how you had some speakers come in before the season and talk about some of these things that we've mentioned already. And maybe it is having some of those people come in and make this an emphasis to the athletes. But what are some ways that coaches and mentors can help athletes build the identity that they need to have, not just necessarily what culture tells them to have?
I think it's a lot in how we speak to our athletes, like I mentioned before, making sure that our comments to them are not always based on performance, making sure that we are praising them for the little things we see. Like, there may be a day where a teammate's down and I see another teammate go to them and try to pick them up. And that's something I always try to go and praise. I mean, at the end of the day, we're people pleasers kind of down to our core. And so the athletes want to please. And so the things that we're noting and we're saying, hey, I saw you do this. I appreciate that. That was great for your team. They're going to repeat. And so making sure that we talk about those things and we compliment those things. And also just in downtime, our team does team devos a lot of times, and hearing their teammates talk about similar things is really helpful as well. And then before games or before practices every day, we have a whiteboard, and they have to write down their goal for the day, or we might have another prompt. Like, sometimes we say, hype up a teammate. And so they have to write under another teammate's name, something that they are trying to hype them up on. And so through that, they also have to write in a color, and the color tells us how they're feeling that day. So a green day, your body feels great, your mind feels great, you've had a great day, you're ready to have the best practice ever. Orange, we actually joke that it's mid. We're trying to use their lingo,
Yeah.
So
red's probably the worst, I guess.
Red is cooked. Yeah. That's what they decided on, cooked.
Yeah.
So red means like either my body is really injured or I've had the worst day ever. Yeah. So through that, us as coaches, we go and we look at the whiteboard every day while they're stretching, and we kind of just get to do a check-in really fast. How are our athletes doing? Yeah. So if I see someone who's not on green, Coach Will or I will go immediately address that. So Matt, if you had written an orange, we'd go up to you and be like, hey, I saw you're on orange. What's up today? Yeah. And we've gotten responses from just like, my knee's hurting today. Or one girl, a freshman one year, she'd gone to the wrong class that day and like just walked into the wrong one.
Like
and
embarrassed.
So she was just trying to recover from that still. Or, they may have had something going on at home. Yeah. And so from that, we can kind of check in on them as a person. And then it's easier to coach them that day based on that. Because if I know you come in cooked that day, right? Yeah. You've had the worst day ever. Mid, right? I still will address when you are not measuring up to expectation, but it's going to come from a place of, hey, I know today was hard. I need you to be present here. Yeah. Your team needs you. Try to fight through that instead of just being like, hey, get it together. Come on. Because that's not what they need that day. And so I think also just acknowledging the fact that they are a person who has ups and downs outside of volleyball. And yes, when we come to volleyball, we are bringing the very best we have every day, and that is an expectation. Just knowing kind of where they are at when they come in helps, I think, with the coaching aspect as well. Yeah. And it helps them identify as more than just a product that I'm trying to mold and
Right.
then get out there. You know, they feel more seen. And I think that helps them play with a little more confidence and identity in more than just how they perform that day.
And it helps them to know that you care about them other than just how they're performing. I mean, there's other things that you're taking into account there as well. You had mentioned something earlier that I'd never really heard anybody say before necessarily on this podcast, and I really liked it. It was when you said volleyball, really, if you think about it, without the spiritual aspects of it, it's just kind of hitting a ball around and there's not a lot else going on. And it's kind of, when you think about it that way, it kind of leads to the next question. What role does faith, family, or community play in keeping an athlete's identity grounded when competing? There is a lot more than just the game itself. So without those other things, it makes the game not as, much of a thing without all those other stuff to go along with it. So what role does faith? We're at a Christian institution. Obviously, there are some faith aspects. Character is emphasized as well. So what role does faith, family, or community play in that?
So I remember my first year coaching at the collegiate level, and I'd gone from teaching where it's very evident what I was doing for Christ, right? I was giving these students a safe place to learn and grow, and I felt really confident in that. And then I went to coaching, and I remember being on the court pregame, and we were playing against a really high-level team, but that team's character was not great.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there across the net from them and thinking, what am I doing for Christ right now? Like, if all sport is wins and losses and how well can I hit the ball around, then why am I spending my time doing that when I could be doing so much more for the Lord? And that was an existential crisis for me. And I was like, maybe I should go do something else. Maybe I shouldn't be coaching. And then through the years, he has really taught me and shown me where he is using me in this role, and all the things that a coach can do to serve the Lord. And I think one of the big ones is getting to nurture these girls through the ups and downs and through, like, I get a perspective of their life that other people aren't privy to because we spend so much time together. We're with them on the road. We're with them every day pretty much. I mean, they get a day off every week usually, but every afternoon after school, we see them after their hard tests. We see them when they've just had a phone call home and someone's sick that they love. We get to see them in all these aspects that maybe when they're in college, really, I feel like we do get to be their closest adult.
Yeah.
Because they have professors, but the professors have 100 other students.
Yeah.
They have people at church, but that church has 200 other members at least. And so we are their closest adult. And in that comes a lot of responsibility. It's a blessing too, because it gives me a chance to see into their lives and try to help where I can. And so when I view sport as a growth opportunity for them, one of the best volleyball coaches ever, his name is Coach Karai, and he was an Olympic gold medalist. Now he's a national team coach. And he said a quote one time in a podcast, and it was, this is a place of becoming. And I have that sign in my office, and that's how I feel about our program, right? You come in, and Drew Stutz also says this. He says, I'm more concerned about the 30-year-old version of you.
Right.
And so they come into our program, they've just come out of high school, they've just come out of their parents' care. They're trying to figure out who they're going to be as an adult, who they're going to be in society. And so we get to mold that section of their life and hold them accountable and help them grow, and help them figure out who they want to be, how they're going to serve the Lord with the gifts they've been given. And so it's really fun to help girls identify that. Like, we have a player this year who's a senior, and you talked earlier about having a joy.
Yeah.
Well, we just read the book Energy Bus.
There you go.
And actually, there is a Joy. She's the bus driver. They have a thing called a chief energy officer.
Yeah.
And so we have a player who just is magnetic in her energy, whether it's up or down. The whole team follows her. And so we kind of have called her out on that and said, hey, this is your role this year.
Yeah.
You are our CEO. And where you go, the team will follow. And so we need your energy to constantly be positive. Right now, she's actually injured, but she still knows her role, and she still knows how important she is. And it's not about how many kills she's getting in a game. It's about who she is as a person and how that makes our team better.
Yeah.
And so that's been another thing, honestly, going way back to what we talked about at the beginning. Through the years of coaching, I've encountered girls with injuries, and I don't think I handled those well in the past. When you see an athlete as just a piece of the production and not as a person, when they're injured, I've struggled sometimes to really try to dig in and make sure they feel valued and make sure they still know they're important. And so that's something over the years I've had to learn. Like when they're injured, keep speaking to their soul, keep telling them you are important because of, we need you to. And that gives them purpose and keeps them motivated even when their sport kind of is taken away.
Yeah. Before you even get, and you have a little bit different experience as well because you've coached some in high school before you came to Freed-Hardeman. So you've seen a little bit of the influences that these players a lot of times have at the high school level, junior high level, whenever they start playing volleyball, in your case, really any sport that athletes play growing up, they have parents influencing them, whether positive or negative. There's a lot of times you see some negative influences where the parents put so much pressure on their kids that sometimes it makes them not even want to play a sport later on because there's just so much pressure early on. But maybe on the flip side of that, how can parents support their kids in developing some of these things we've talked about outside of just how successful are you, not just being someone like, I'm going to want you to do well so you can have all these wins and get these scholarships, but focusing on some of these other things such as character and all these things that we talk about. How can parents maybe play a role in that?
I think, like we talked about earlier, it's in how you talk to them. And like Bob Goff says, tell them who they are. So encourage them when they're a good teammate, right? If they get taken out of a game because their performance wasn't how it normally is, how did they treat the person that took their spot? So when you see them, treat them well, really praise them, or even front load it. So it's going into season, like in preseason, everybody's happy, right? Because no one knows who's going to play. So everybody's happy. And we talked about that a lot. So maybe front load it and say, okay, what if you don't get that starting spot? How are you going to respond? How are you going to continue to be a good teammate? How are you going to keep fighting for that position? And just having them think through, which this is an activity we do with our team. What if you don't get what you want? How are you going to still support your team? Because at the end of the day, if we don't have everybody, we don't have anything. Making sure that you are, one, praising them when they do character things. Say that you noticed it. You got really excited for her when she got that kill. I love seeing that from you. I love how much you care for your teammates. Just talking through those things so they know that they make you proud, even if they don't even play or even if they don't have their best game, you're still really proud of who they are. I think that is super key and seems to work with the girls that I've coached.
Yeah. Can you share a story of a time when sports revealed something deeper about who you were? So we talk a lot about shaping these athletes that you're coaching, but sometimes athletes can teach maybe the coaches a little bit on things, the way things happen in a game or the way they respond. And maybe it teaches the coach something they maybe didn't know about themselves. So maybe a tough question, but is there a story that comes to mind that maybe something revealed something about who you were as a result of volleyball or whatever sport you're coaching?
Okay, so now let's go back to that coffee analogy,
there
right?
You go.
So we talked about this morning in our little girls coaching get together, that whatever's in your cup, when something inconvenient happens, that's what's going to pour out. I mean, inconvenient things happen all the time, right? Yeah. You lose a point. Somebody on the court does not do what they're supposed to do. Someone gets injured. Yeah. Someone gets injured. The ref makes a crazy call, right? So many things are inconvenient. And so I found out that I had a little bit of rage inside, and also some controlling aspects. And so it is really interesting to reflect after a game of how did I respond when things did not go the way I wanted them to. That has really been a jump off point for me to continue growing, just spending time reflecting. And a lot of times when I reflect on the way I behaved in a game or at a practice, I'm like, oof, we still got a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the fun part, is that it does, it is a magnifying glass, like I said, for the players.
Yeah.
So it does continue to show me ways that I can keep working towards being a better person and being more like Christ. But I think that is one early. I was very passionate early, which I still am passionate, but I was passionate to extremes. So I'd get really excited when things went well, but I'd get really mad when things went bad.
Yeah.
And your players and your team are a reflection of you, I think, as a coach. And the way you handle things is the way they're going to handle things.
Yeah.
And so flying off the handle is not necessarily a great thing for your players to do. And so that's not something I can do either. And so that's something I am continuously working on, is that self-reflection piece. And I don't know that I have one specific example because things go wrong in every game.
Yeah.
So pick a game, that is something. And there's also been some times where in a practice I've responded poorly to a player and I have made something bigger than it was, or in my past years, that would be something that I would just be like, well, they should have done it right. But I have found the value in recently just going to that player after and being like, this probably wasn't the best way for me to handle it. And I am working on responding better in the future. So here is my expectation for you. And I want you to keep working on that. But I'm going to keep working on how I give my feedback to you.
Yeah.
And do that in a way that better helps you instead of just shuts down the situation. And so that has been, honestly, that's been my favorite part of coaching the past couple of years, is just how much growth sport allows us all to do, coaches included.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I've heard from other coaches too, thinking about owning up if there's a mistake that you feel like you've made and letting the players know, hey, I messed up here. What that does is it lets the players know it's okay for me to admit when I mess up and to hold myself accountable, just like coaches holding themselves accountable. So in that way, you're modeling how players are supposed to, interact with each other as a team and things like that.
In life, like as an adult, I've learned you do mess up. Like think about all the times that we have not lived up to the expectation we had for ourselves or that others had for us. And if you just make excuses all the time, you don't really get anywhere. But sometimes you just have to look at your boss or your spouse and say, hey, I messed up there. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on it. And owning up allows for growth, whereas excuses kind of just allow for you. Yeah, you don't get to grow. And I think also one thing I've had to work on is growth without shame. So when we mess up, there doesn't necessarily have to be shame in that, right? For example, here's one that, going back to your other question, if a player showed up late to something, that was automatically like, I can't believe you did that. That's the worst thing ever. Starting in the spring this year, I implemented, if you're late, you run. And I tried to take the shame away from that. So it wasn't like you get a lecture and then you run. It's just, you're late, here's the consequence, go do it. We act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I found the beauty in that. One morning, we had a morning practice, and I had set my alarms for PM, not AM. And so I was the one that was late.
Do you run?
I actually did.
Yeah.
So I got there, and normally I would beat myself up for that. Like, you're the coach, you're the leader. I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
You're showing a bad example to the girls. You wouldn't let them do this. But instead, I just said, I'm a person. I mess up. The girls mess up sometimes too. I'm going to do my consequence. And I ran the sprints. I did give myself, I called it an old lady second. So I gave myself an extra second and then they would get to finish.
Right.
I also wasn't warm. So I feel like I could have made it though.
Yeah.
But I ran my sprints and then we went about practice like normal. And I didn't allow it to give me a bad mood that I would then push off on the girls, which, if you're a player and you get in trouble for being late, that could ruin your whole practice. Yeah. But if you're a player and you're late, you just do your running, and then you get to move on to practice without feeling that shame associated.
Yeah.
You're able to play to your best and give your best to your team. And so that's something I've learned as an adult, to try to remove the shame from it, just take the ownership of it and accept what's going on, and then move on. And so that way you can continue to give your best.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, just one final question here. In your opinion, how should athletes balance the ambition to have success, like we've talked about, and have that personal identity that's rooted in something other than sports? So you want athletes to have a competitive edge. You want them to have some sort of desire to succeed and do well, but you want them to learn all these other things as well. So how do they balance that as an athlete?
That actually made me think of our team motto. Our team decided on a statement that we just live by, and it was based on the verse Colossians 3:23. It says, whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord and not for men. I think that is where the balance lies. I am giving my all, but I am not giving my all to prove that I am good enough. I am not giving my all for just like a trophy all the time.
Yeah.
I'm giving my all because my God has blessed me with the opportunity to get to play the sport I love. And with success comes a bigger platform where then I can show him to a broader community. And so that's something we talk about on our team as well, is because you're an athlete, you are put on a platform, whether you want to be or not. You are put under a microscope. Your message may reach more people or different people than other people's message may.
Right.
And so the way you behave and the way, like how hard you work, is a reflection of who you serve. That's really big for our girls, is just, I'm doing this and I'm giving my best because that's what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that work ethic automatically comes with that, because I have committed to this. I have committed to this team. God has given me this opportunity to be here, and let's see what all we can do with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really fun. And that's my favorite part about being at Freed-Hardeman and coaching in an atmosphere where Christ is the center. is when things are hard or when we aren't motivated, we can go back to, well, why am I doing this? And that why is the greatest why you could possibly have.
Yeah.
And it never changes. And so that makes it so much more fun and so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, I really appreciate you coming on today. Good luck with the rest of the season. I think you'll be in Arkansas this weekend.
We will. And there's no air conditioning, so hoping for cool weather.
Yeah.
Hoping.
Well, good luck with that, and appreciate you coming on. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Special thanks again to Amanda Bretherick for being my guest this week. Be sure to listen to this episode and future episodes on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also catch the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Freed-Hardeman Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character and on the NAIA Champions of Character website at naia.org/champions of character. Join me for our next episode as I talk with Freed-Hardeman Head Baseball Coach, Mr. Jess Trask, on the topic of coaching through conflict. And remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard, it's about the character we build along the way. We'll see you next time on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.